Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We've got Alan Saunders on today. Want to talk about OTAs now that they begin today. Who are the top players we're looking for? Also, do the Steelers have a plan B if Aaron Rodgers does not sign? That and more here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the number one sportsbook in America. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when you hit on your first bet of $5 or more. More on that later. As I said before, we're joined by the man himself, Alan Saunders. He's back on this show. Alan, always great to have you on the show, man. OTAs begin today. I know it's just football in shorts. I know it's not a whole lot, but it's another step towards the season in football, the actual football season, and it does get me excited to see that kind of progress that gets going.
I feel like this is one of those like teases where like every year we get psyched up to like see OTAs, and then we get there and it's like, oh yeah, they don't actually do very much here. Like, there's always, I think the thing that always drives the conversation is new. You know, like you want to see DK Metcalf for the first time. You want to see Darius Slay, who's going to play in the slot. You know, Caleb Johnson out there with the first team could be interesting. But you know, it is just football in shorts. And, you know, I'm interested this year too. It's a shorter OTAs. It's only 6 sessions. That's way less than the Steelers have normally done. I'm interested to see what that means, how it's going to be different. We talked a lot after the season about the Steelers having a serious problem with keeping players healthy last year. And I wonder how much that went into the conversation to have a shorter OTAs, if the players feel like this will be better for them. I'm interested to see what it looks like.
I'm interested too, but let's talk about some of the players we're most interested in also watching in OTAs. You know, I know the rookies are always automatic locks. Like you want to get a closer look at them. But one guy off the top of my head that's right at the top of the list is a guy that kind of is going to be entering his rookie season, and that's Roman Wilson, a guy that we did not see last year. He was a third-round pick at wide receiver. People at the Steelers were hoping he could step into that number 2 role or at least like an exciting 3 role, and they never got a chance to look at him. He wasn't healthy. He didn't. He never got to take the field, and so we still don't know what Roman Wilson even looks like in a game of NFL football. What's your expectations for what to see of him? What should we see of him that shows, hey, he has at least done the work and he's on his progress to being at least a guy that can challenge for playing time come the fall?
Yeah, I think he's probably among the players that has the most that can be proven this time of year. There are certainly other players that have a lot to prove, and we'll talk about some of them, but wide receiver is one of the few positions that I feel like you really can fairly evaluate at OTAs. It's, outside of occasionally breaking a tackle or how they look blocking. And by the way, I don't have any concerns about Roman Wilson's ability or willingness in that area. They really can show most of what they're being asked to do in shorts in this environment. And so I think wide receiver is an important position to look at, cornerback also. And I think the expectation should be pretty high for Roman Wilson. You know, I don't think he had a great OTAs last year before his injury early in training camp. But I thought he looked good when he returned to practice at the very end of last season after dealing with those injuries. We'll see what kind of player the Steelers have in Roman Wilson, but I think he's definitely someone that right now, like, it's probably wide receiver 4. That could definitely change in terms of the team's plans for him if he shows that he can be the player that people thought he was going to be when they drafted him.
I think that's the thing. He just has to come in and make me. He doesn't have to be a star right away. But if he comes in, if he's getting open, if he's creating separation, that'll also lessen the need for the Steelers to make a huge investment at the wide receiver position sooner rather than later. You know, eventually they're going to need to probably double dip. Like right now, if you ask me, like, you know, that might be something else that they're holding on to. They want to see what kind of guys they have before they determine what type of wide receiver they get, whether it's trade or signing another in free agency. Because if they feel like they've got a better chance at having some explosive guys behind DK Metcalf, whether it be Austin or Wilson or someone else, then they can be like, okay, you know what? don't need to try to go out and spend big and get a big name addition there at wide receiver. I've said Roman Wilson. Give me another play that's on the top of your mind that you're saying, hey, when OTA practices start, I'm looking to see where this guy is.
Beanie Bishop. I mentioned wide receiver, corner are to me the two positions where you can do the most in shorts. And like you look at the slot corner situation, they bring in Brandon Eccles. He's never really played the slot all that much, even though like the Giants sort of notionally listed him as the slot corner for most of last year. When he did play, it was on the outside. He certainly looks like he has the body to play a slot corner, but he's kind of light. He doesn't seem like he's a great tackler. You have Dante Kent, you have Sebastian Castro. There's some wild cards in there. But to me, this is a job that's there for the taking for Beanie Bishop if he can step up and do it. Saw his playing time reduced down the stretch when the Steelers got Cam Sutton available to them last year. I don't think that looks like a great decision in hindsight right now. I think I'd rather feel better about Beanie Bishop, even if the play had been worse. But I think he's the guy's an opportunity to win a job over the course of this offseason. I think that process at corner can start as soon as today.
I think that's a very good point. Slot corner could be a tricky position for the Steelers there to look at. And look, Beanie Bishop was making some plays, even if some of them were kind of like just fell into his lap a little bit. He had multiple interceptions. In fact, he intercepted Aaron Rodgers. He was having some very good early contributions, and then the hope was that he'd be able to that Cam Sutton would be able to take over and contribute even more. And that certainly backfired down the stretch there. Alan, give me one more player that you're looking at that's not a rookie who you have eyes on for early starts of OTAs.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Broderick Jones on the left side, it's going to be really hard. They're not blocking. It's just football in shorts. But I do want to see what he looks like over there if we think it's going to be a success. I think there's a lot, there's a ton going into that move working for the Steelers this year, because if it doesn't, I mean, with all respect to Calvin Anderson, it's not like they have like another starting tackle to turn to if Broderick Jones doesn't work out. Like they kind of have all their eggs in that basket, and there's a lot riding on that. And so, some early hiccups in this process should probably ring some alarm bells if that's the plan. And really plan A and one and only plan at left tackle. We'll see how things go.
I'm right with you there. That's the thing. I want to see if they just put him at left tackle to start. If Altano's on the right, he's on the left, then I'm like, okay, when we see where guys are lining up, that'll be a big thing. Get the footwork going, get him as comfortable as he can at that position, at the position that they've said they've wanted him to be comfortable at for some time. We will continue to look at that moving forward. OTAs begin tomorrow, but as always, there's always other things moving. We want to talk about another rumor that started as far as what the Steelers could do at quarterback. We'll talk about that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Alan Saunders, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, remind you, this show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy and to stay in the game before tip-off and live during the games. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever before to play smart and win big. The Knicks and Pacers face off in the East, while the Timberwolves and Thunder throw down in the West. Stars like Anthony Edwards, Jalen Brunson, SGA, and Tyrese Halliburton are sure to light up box scores and win people plenty of money on their prop bets. And if you're new to FanDuel, you can win $200 in bonus bets if you hit on your first bet of $5 or more. It's a great deal to take advantage of during the NBA playoffs. If you're new to FanDuel, be sure to sign up at FanDuel.com to get your chance to win $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Alan Saunders. I don't know where his camera went here. Alan, are you still with me?
I'm still with you. I don't know where my camera is.
His camera's gone. Well, we're going to hope you figure that out while I talk here. But let's get into a few things here as Alan's screen is black. If this stays funny enough, if you're able to get it back, we'll keep this going. There we go. He's back somehow. That's staying in the show. If that was going too long, I'd have to recut that. But we're going to keep it rolling here. All right. So, Alan, Jeremy Fowler, one of our colleagues, worked at ESPN. He put on a report there that said that the Steelers have a Plan B interest in making a Kirk Cousins trade happen. Now, of course, Kirk Cousins, guy who's played a long time in the league now. He's now with the Falcons on a pretty big deal. Michael Penix came up and kind of took his spot last year, looked better, and there's wonderings if the Steelers could make a play for Kirk Cousins after he played last year. Last year, in fact, they faced off against Kirk Cousins. They beat him. He finished the year 7-7 on 14 starts, through 18 touchdowns, 16 interceptions. That led the NFL in interceptions. Alan, I get that the idea that the Steelers might want him, but here's the thing. I'm not all that certain that they are trying to trade for Kirk Cousins, because he comes with a hefty price tag, and so the Falcons would have to eat a lot of that price to get him, and I'm just not sure he's worth that. I'm also just not sure, even without the price tag, if he's worth it. He wasn't playing very good last year, especially late in the season. He looked like his arm was falling off. He looked like age had really caught up to him in ways that weren't going to be beneficial. I don't know if I'm all in on this one with Kirk Cousins. What say you about the idea of the Steelers even trying to get him?
I don't really make very much of this. I mean, I don't think that they're that interested in Kirk Cousins.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that interest throughout the process. I don't think the money is not great. He's guaranteed $27.5 million this year. It seems like throughout the process, the Steelers have been very focused on whoever their quarterback is for the 2025 season, not breaking the bank. They literally walked away from Justin Fields over not that much money. Aaron Rodgers, money has not been an issue in those discussions. I think that's intentional. I don't see them paying $27 million for Kirk Cousins. Now, maybe the Falcons will be a motivated seller and want to eat a lot of that money. But if you're the Falcons, the only reason to do that is if you're trading a significant draft pick. And why would the Steelers want to trade a significant draft pick when they just spent all offseason going out of their way to accumulate those draft picks so they can trade up to get a quarterback in the 2026 NFL draft? This doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. I also think, look, Kirk Cousins is 38, Aaron Rodgers is 41. It's not like he's so old that it's unreasonable to think that he could still be good. But Aaron Rodgers, go look at his 2024 season. He got better as the year went on. Kirk Cousins looked awful down the stretch last year. I mean, is he better than Mason Rudolph? Probably, but I'm a little skeptical of this happening.
I'm right with you. I was not. Kirk Cousins was a player, even but like when the whole process started, like I thought Aaron Rodgers was a little bit further down my list. Kirk Cousins wasn't even on my list of quarterbacks the Steelers should even try to attempt to get. And to your point, things just deteriorated in his last 5 games. Starting last season, he threw 1 touchdown and 1, 3, 7, 8, 9 interceptions. In his last 5 games, he threw 1 touchdown and 9 interceptions. That's how bad it got with Kirk Cousins and the Falcons last year. Why would you want to bring that into your situation? Whereas like Aaron Rodgers didn't have a great year, but 26 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, much better situation than what you get with Kirk Cousins. So we'll move off the Kirk Cousins topic real quick. Let's move back to Aaron Rodgers. Now, I've been talking about the past few episodes here about the hints that have continued to be dropped. One Aaron dropped himself on some other podcast where he was talking about, I'll be on the road in Chicago this year. Adam Schefter's comments, all the things that we're hearing. Alan, do you feel like it's almost like it's pretty much a certainty that Aaron Rodgers signs, or is there still an ace up his sleeve that he could just once again, just kind of flip the whole football world upside down with a decision?
I think it's pretty clear he's going to sign with Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's an interesting guy. I don't think I would put it past him to have a last second change of heart about something, but I think it seems pretty clear that everyone's expecting him to sign with Pittsburgh at this point.
I'm in the same boat. And I think that there's people who are in the mode like, why are you waiting around for this guy? Why are you giving him all this leverage? And why are you just looking desperate for Aaron Rodgers? As we've been saying, it's not about desperation. It was kind of like, hey, when they decided this was going to be it, this was, there wasn't another option there. It's not like they like every day they sit there right now that they're passing up on better options that are available. It'd be different if guys were still available to sign in free agency who were starter worthy quarterbacks and they were competing with it. I get that, but right now I think that Aaron Rodgers, I'm fairly certain there is like a backdoor handshaking agreement where Aaron Rodgers is and the Pittsburgh Steelers say, hey, by this date, this is when it's going to happen. The Steelers aren't trying to oust it and say when it's going to happen or put that pressure on Aaron. Aaron's going to just come through and does it when he does it. But I'm pretty sure that's the state that the Steelers are in with Aaron Rodgers, where like there's a they won't say the deadline publicly, but there probably is one. There probably is one like, hey, we'd like you to be here by this time, and Aaron Rodgers has that. And I do wonder though, Alan, is that after OTAs and right before minicamp, or is there another date that comes to mind to you for when Aaron Rodgers might be showing up?
I mean, I think Mike Tomlin said the deadline. I think it's training camp. I don't really think there's a point before then that it makes sense for the Steelers to say, no, we don't want you. I do think if Aaron Rodgers skips minicamp, that will cause some issues. But I still don't think those issues are worth walking away from him over. But I do think, and I'm not speaking for some players, but look, there's a lot of guys who don't want to go to minicamp who are going to go to minicamp.
Yep.
And I can see someone deciding not to do that to sign 2 weeks later, ruffling some feathers. I can see that. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I do think it is better. Look, he's like, he legitimately has some people in his life that are not, some things going on. It's not like he's making stuff up. And I do think it's better to not be on the team and not go to minicamp than it is to be on the team and not go to minicamp because something comes up, right? And so I don't get the sense that the Steelers are frustrated with the status quo at all. They seem to be perfectly okay for him to let this process play out at his pace. And look, I think the Steelers are possibly irrationally confident in Mason Rudolph. The entire process for the Steelers shifted the day they signed Mason Rudolph. I was talking to people inside the organization every day, like, oh my God, what's going to happen to quarterback? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? And ever since they signed Mason Rudolph, it's been like, okay, if we get Rodgers, we do. If we don't, it's fine. Whatever. Figure it out.
It does seem like there's a confidence that the Steelers have in Mason Rudolph for, like, breaking glass in case Aaron Rodgers just chooses not to show up and he becomes that guy for the season. And like you said, whether or not that's the right plan, that does seem to be their plan. They still seem to have a confidence in him. Alan, I look at this situation and I do wonder if there's I know that we're saying Mike Tomlin said training camp is the deadline, but should OTAs and minicamp be a sort of deadline for? Because it's like, look, Aaron, you're going to be on your third team in the last 4 years. You're coming into a system. Yes, you're a veteran quarterback. Yes, you have all the experience. Yes, you'll be able to pick up the playbook and probably understand a lot of what the Steelers are trying to do, pretty quickly. But shouldn't there be an emphasis to make sure that ball gets rolling sooner rather than later so that they can get things coordinated for the offense? Or is there more? Is the pressure that's put on that when we talk about that conversation, is that misplaced? Is that overstated when we talk about the importance of getting in for OTAs? Because as we know, Aaron Rodgers, didn't do that last year with the Jets, and Garrett Wilson was pretty vocal about that. And people wondered, well, what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers? And it seems like that might be the situation again this year for the Steelers.
I don't know that Aaron Rodgers is going to get a lot of value out of OTAs. I think the Steelers would get some value out of him being at OTAs. I think if he's of the mindset that he wants to have a say in what his playbook is going to look like, he should probably be communicating that, whether he's there or not. I think that communication is probably the most important thing, whether it's in person because he's at OTAs and you're talking every day, or if you just have an open line of communication. I think you can accomplish that either way, but you can't show up 3 days before training camp and be like, oh yeah, these are the plays I like, figure it out. Like you got to have some communication in there if you're expecting that to be part of the process. So, I mean, look, I think the importance of OTAs is generally greatly overrated. We didn't have them in 2020. I don't think anybody missed them. Like I think we could do away with OTAs and the NFL product would not suffer one noticeable amount.
And as we know, the NFL is trying to move. Well, it's the NFLPA rather is trying to move OTAs to being a part of a ramp up system to get you ready for training camp rather than a spring activity.
I think OTAs should only be for guys on rookie contracts. I think that would be better. That would let guys that need the reps and experience take them, and let guys that don't stay home and stay healthy.
Okay, well, there you go. There's a theory there. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about a topic about the Steelers' latest investments, and that's in the trenches on both sides of the ball, offense and defensive line. How quickly can we expect those investments to start paying dividends for the Steelers? That's next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Alan Saunders. Stick with us. We'll be right back. We're back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Alan Saunders. Alan, let's talk about the trenches that they've invested into, because one thing I remind people about is that the offensive line and the defensive line can sometimes be the longest developing of young picks to develop into studs in the NFL. Not always. There's some guys that just burst onto the scene in the NFL, become superstars right away. You know, we think back to Marquise Pouncey. That was certainly the case for him. He came in as a rookie and was changing all sorts of tones at the line of scrimmage. But for some guys, and I even say most linemen, it takes time. You look back at Cam Hayward's time with the Steelers. He wasn't that big a presence early. It took him some years before he figured out his role and how to be very good. And then it took him a couple more years to be elite. And then he became the Cam Hayward for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But we've seen this time and time again where it takes some of these guys time to develop. How quickly do you think that the Steelers can start seeing the dividends of these drafts really pay off in football games at a consistent rate?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think big guys, the bigger the player, the harder the development curve. And they got a couple really big ones in Derrick, Harmon, and Wyatt Black this year that we haven't seen much of. Troy Fautanu yet. It's basically like another rookie in this class in terms of experience. I think that the Steelers roster is in a place where those guys are going to have opportunities, but that doesn't mean they're going to be great right away. Yeah. Like there's a big, like Cam Hayward was given the grace of developing in a rotational role because the Steelers had Brett Keisel and Aaron Smith.
Right.
And they didn't need him to play right away. There's nobody stopping Derrick Harmon from starting this year. Like he's going to start this year. The question will just be how well does that go? And does being fed to the wolves a little bit end up being harmful long-term or helpful long-term? I think those are unanswered questions.
They certainly are. And then you flip to the offensive side of the ball. You still got second-year players in Zach Frazier and Mason McCormick and Troy Fautanu. And really, he's going to be a first-year player because he didn't play last year. And then you get Broderick Jones, who still hasn't really found his consistent footing. I think it's still going to take this group time to coalesce and come together. I do think you can see them individually take steps forward. But this is going to be the group that I watch the closest. I say this a lot on the show. The Steelers' offensive line, that has to be the best. If that's the biggest accomplishment of this season, as far as roster building wise, the offensive line comes together. That's a big win for the Steelers if they can actually do that, because then the offensive line does become that fighting force that they need in the trenches. Moves the line of scrimmage, gives the running back space, protects quarterbacks, and then you can start building out from there. And that's a big problem that's been solved. But they need to actually see that progress come into focus here, because if the Steelers don't start seeing that, I think that's going to be a big thing. And that's why I think sometimes it's tough to ask that, because we're talking about all these young guys, these guys that are going to be second-year players, and Fautanu and Frazier and McCormick. They're all three of them are still older than Broderick Jones, and it was known that he was going to be a project when he came to the Steelers. And that's why I think it's a thing here where it's going to be like, hey, the Steelers have made these investments. I think they're good investments, but it's going to take time to figure out if they really are.
You know, let's throw out yet another younger guy who I don't think a lot of people are talking about this offseason. And you talk about like Cam Hayward taking like 3 years really to get into becoming the player that we sort of know him to be. I think there's a lot on Keanu Benton this year. Like it's sort of like you're talking like it's not really fair to expect Derrick Harmon to come in, start as a rookie, and be an impact player. If he is, great, like that's awesome. But it's not really a reasonable expectation. That's not usually the way it goes, even with really good players. But entering year 3 for Keanu Benton, I think it's reasonable for him to take a bigger step forward than I think I was expecting him to take one from his rookie year to last year that I'm not sure we really saw. And I think he's a player that it is reasonable to expect him to take a big step forward. Like a lot of that playing time from Larry Ogunjobi is going to end up going to Keanu Benton. Like, you saw last year, most of the time Steelers go nickel defense. First group off the bench was Hayward and Ogunjobi. Yeah, Derrick Harmon's going to be a starter, but I get the feeling that a lot of times we go nickel, first 2 off the bench are going to be Hayward and Benton. Yeah. And I think he's going to have the opportunity to really take that big jump from a guy who is a starter to a guy who's a real difference maker on the defense.
Absolutely. I'm on the same page as you, because that's the thing is that when we talk about what the base set is, a lot of people still think the 3-4 is. It's not. It's really the nickel. That's what they deploy a lot of, and that rotation of interior defensive linemen the Steelers develop. Who's going to be in that first group? Who's going to be in that second group? You also got to fit Dan Aquale into this picture because they acquired him in free agency. So you have Hayward, you have Benton, you have the rookies in Harmon and Black, and then you have Aquale in that faction, and probably not in that direct order. Aquale is probably going to be in that second rotation with Harmon, I would imagine. But I think there's a chance there for you to see progress from those guys. It's just going to be about how quickly can you see progress in the ways that you need to see them. Like, for example, you may not be expecting Derrick Harmon to be this great interior pass rusher right away, but I do think you want to see him be a physical force that makes sure that the run game just doesn't have a ton of space to just run because they're blowing him off the ball. I think that's where you need to see this group take a step forward, especially as their strength against the run, their strength against double teams, making sure that their linebackers are clean and being a bigger presence up at the line of scrimmage to make sure that the run game of future teams don't break them the way that the Ravens did in the playoffs.
Yeah, the good news is, they do have, I think, a pretty easy start to the season in terms of like getting those guys. Like, if you are expecting young guys to be major contributors in the trenches, at least like both Ravens games, you're talking about that, are in the last 5 weeks of the season. Mm-hmm. So like that's somewhat of an advantage in that regard.
It is, but we will have time to continue to evaluate those advantages as OTAs begin. We'll keep you up to date with all things here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. What we see with some of those players we talked about, Roman Wilson, Broderick Jones, Beanie Bishop, and so forth. We'll keep an eye on all those factors here as OTAs begin today. They run through Thursday. We'll be keeping you up to date with those things there. Alan, thanks so much for joining us here. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
@Saunders_PGH on social media. SteelersNow.com is where you can find my written work and my podcasts. Steelers Morning Rush and Steelers Afternoon Drive are on the Steelers Now YouTube page or anywhere you find podcasts.
Absolutely. He's Alan Saunders. I'm Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, all the social medias. Same handle every time, @Carter Critiques. You can read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. And you can find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you here tomorrow after the first days of Steelers OTAs right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.